All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Good evening and welcome to the Regional Planning Committee meeting. It is March 27th, 2023, and we're meeting this evening via Zoom teleconference. We could have a roll call, Eliza?
Yes, and people may be coming in as I'm doing this, but from Chester, we have
Yep,
Cindy
that's fine.
Lignar.
We're good. We're good.
We don't see anyone from Clinton. From Cromwell, we have Nick Demetriadis and Anthony LaCava. I don't see Tony. From Durham, we have Frank DeFelice. From East Hampton, we have Michael Kowalczyk. From Haddam, we have Raul de Brigard. From Killingworth, we have Alec Martin and Stephanie Warren. From Middletown, we have Catherine Johnson and Kellen Atherton. From Old Saybrook, we have Doug McCracken and Michael Bender. No one can come from Portland. And from Westbrook, we have Bill Neal.
All right. And as far as seating of alternates?
We are, let me look. We don't have any alternates to seat because all their members are here.
Wonderful. All right. With that, a motion to adopt the agenda would be in order.
So moved.
Moved in. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? I declare the motion passed. All right, we'll move to item number 5, public comment. Members of the public wishing to speak, this is your time. You can either use the raise hand icon if you're familiar with using that, or just flag us down and we'll give you the floor. Public comment, anyone? All right. With that, we'll move to item number 6, approval of the minutes of the past meeting. These should have been in your package.
Move they be adopted as presented.
Motion's been made by Bill Neal. Is there a second? To Bill's
Second.
motion? Second. Thank you very much, Alex. All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining?
Abstain. I was
All
not
right,
present.
Doug is abstaining, not present. Any others? I declare the motion passed. Thank you. All right, with that, we'll move on to referrals. We have a referral from Lyme Agricultural Regulations. Sam, who will be speaking on that tonight?
Let's see. Right, Torrance is not here, but Megan, are you familiar with this from the Gateway meeting?
I don't see Megan.
Okay. All right. Do we have the Mary Stone? I don't think was able to make it tonight.
Mary, yeah, she can't.
Yes, she's not able to, no.
Okay, so I can tell you what I know about the Lyme agricultural regulation, and it's not, unfortunately, a lot. But this regulation is pretty detailed. I was staffing the Connecticut River Gateway Commission meeting where they did a cursory review and found that didn't have any impact to the Connecticut River Conservation Zone. But I apologize for not being better prepared to speak on it. And if you give me 1 second.
Has one of the members read it? I know I read it, and my feeling is that if you're for agriculture, you can't help but be pleased at this because it certainly makes life a lot simpler for the for people who are running farms and want to do many things in their farms. And that's usually our position on this board has been to encourage the presence of agriculture in the region. So that was my reaction to it without getting into all the bolts.
Sam, are we up against a time crunch on this?
So the story here was there was a procedural error in how it was originally noticed. So I can join the meeting from my laptop now, But while I'm doing that, I can read you the summary of it.
Oh, great. That would be wonderful.
All right, let me actually, why don't I share, I'll join on Zoom so I can share my screen and I can walk
Excellent.
through this with you. So
Perfect.
Torrance did create a staff summary of the various sections of it, and I can, just one second.
And Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't this already moved a few times? So I don't know about the answer to Frank's question on timing, but I have a feeling this might be our chance at the RPC.
Yes, yeah, I think,
Because we had talked about doing it last month and we pushed it to this month.
All right. I think you're absolutely right, Eliza. We'll give Sam a minute to bring it up and then we can talk about it. Sam, if you want to put it on the screen, that might be helpful too.
Yep, I'm doing it right now. I'm joining as a panelist. Turn the video. Okay.
We can see you.
Oh, there.
Okay, so let me I can not share my screen.
You should be able to now.
Okay. So I'll walk through the summary. All right, so this is from Torrance. So what happened was they originally had scheduled a public hearing to commence in January. They noticed the notice was flawed and it got postponed until now. I think we do need to get back to them for their April meeting. Let's see, the core of the proposals included in section 315-8.6. This outline supplements the scan of the actual regulations where highlights been included by staff and show the specific additions and deletions being proposed. There are some changes that aren't ag related, but are not big changes in the opinion of staff. And those are customary home occupations has been updated to include substantial language on small scale agricultural processing operations. A more detailed outline follows the section 315-8.6 outline. The site plan and special permit sections also include new references to the agricultural section. As a note, the proposal was sent to both East Haddam Land Use Administrator and Old Lyme Zoning Enforcement Officer. Either Jim or Eric had tremendous concerns over the proposal as they felt the scale of uses that are to be permitted were minimal in impact. So that, in other words, it's saying that the neighboring towns don't see any intermissible impacts here. So you'll see on the outline, it's a overarching overhaul of ag uses in the regulations, where agriculture was purposely added into the regulations, where the regulations were silent on agriculture. You'll see new language regarding conservation, soils, ag land, and community definitions, non-agricultural definitions, refuse. Ag language added, rural districts, new use, non-commercial farms, and agriculture. So language regarding commercial ag uses that require site plan and special permit approval. Went into uses permitted, ag uses permitted in commercial districts. Additional ag-related language regarding accessory buildings. Allowing for additional family dwelling units on ag land for agricultural workers. So this would allow more than one family dwelling unit, except as provided for, this would be to allow for the housing of ag workers. Additional language regarding ag-related uses and offensive odors. This is usually part of a right to farm ordinances to protect farmers against nuisance. Farms, will have offensive odors. And it goes on to adding agriculture to various other areas in floodplain management, coastal management, and also temporary signs regarding agricultural uses. In general, it brings the regulations up to a place where Lyme thinks it should be with regard to supporting agriculture. And what I can do, if it's used, this is a long summary, 5 pages. And I don't know if there's anything in particular in going over this that was of interest to individual members. Let me go back.
I just had one question, Sam, and that was regarding the forest, the clearing of forest and the ag land expansion. What exactly, what is their issue there?
Let me find it. All right, that's 315.13.3.
I think you have to go to the regulation itself. I don't know if you have it there. There's other comments.
Oh, in the summary?
Yeah. I think you
There
want,
should be a second document, Sam, that came with that.
right, there's a second document, it's just actually easier to read than this so-called summary.
Yeah.
It looks it.
Let me get to that.
I'd also like to add on behalf of Torrance, since he's not here, that the Regional Agricultural Council did look at this extensively and send in their comments. So it has already been looked at by another regional entity, just so you're all aware.
Okay, let's see, 13. All right, exempted, so this is, it does talk about exempted uses, the following uses if and where permitted by these regulations in the coastal area, permitted from the coastal site plan review requirements. Such uses are not exempt from other zoning permits requirements. Gardening, grazing, pasturing, and cultivation, harvesting crops that does not involve clearing a wooded or forest area or construction of a structure. So that was one area where these were exempted uses from coastal management.
All right, so if somebody has a farm and they want to expand it, they can do that in the coastal area.
Right. No. So, no, what this says is that gardening, grazing, pasturing, and cultivation or harvesting crops is exempted. So it's exempted from coastal site plan review. That does not involve clearing a wooded or forest area. So if they were clearing a wooded or forest area in the coastal management area, it would need a coastal site plan review.
How difficult is that to obtain? Is that just going to a meeting or filling out a form, or what's involved with?
So this is conformance with the State Coastal Management Act. I am not an expert on it, but I think it's probably conformance with state statute, and it's probably something that's not that the town does not have a lot of leeway on. But if you
Yeah,
this
is Bill. I mean, I think I could say the town doesn't have a lot of leeway on it. Fair. And I would kind of say for Lime, man, anybody that's on the what's it, the thing that involves the view shed, but I mean, there's really the vast majority of the land is already big properties, non-farm big properties in Lime. I mean, I don't know that it's really going to make a difference to anybody. It's also really steep going down to it. It's either wetland or steep.
Mm-hmm.
It should also be noted, they've got 12,000 acres of open space.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Bill, were you looking for the word the gateway?
Yes. Sorry. I don't know if anybody's involved in the Gateway Commission, but Lime is, I would say most of the land that is going to be have a coastal site plan is either very vertical or wetland, and most of it is owned by big properties with big houses, very valuable, not farms.
No question.
All right, commission members, do you have any questions for Sam? He's kind of doing a presentation.
Yeah, I don't see any other mention of forest besides also in the floodplain In many places, this is not going to be, as Bill had mentioned, this is not going to be much of an issue. I think this is just to get the regulations in conformance with the Coastal Management Act.
All right, Catherine, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Frank. This is quite a dense regulation, and we're just looking at it for the 500 feet thing to abutting towns. Is that it?
So, the referral process is meant for intermunicipal impacts. And zoning amendment changes come to RiverCOG to weigh in on any concerns that RiverCOG may have that the regulation adopted by one town may have impacts to its neighboring municipalities. In this situation, the neighboring municipalities don't have concern. In general, this is about supporting agriculture within the town of Lyme, and Old Lyme and East Haddam have no objections. So in general, although it's quite a dense regulation, we don't believe that it has any intermunicipal impact. But I think the reason that this was brought to you is because it is quite an overhaul of their ag regulations, and there might be some interesting ideas for some of the other more rural towns of regulations that could be adopted in your towns. I think that's why Torrance wanted it to come to the RPC for review, was not because of concerns of intermunicipal impacts, was mostly that this is something which Lyme is doing to support its agricultural community. I
right.
think,
So I get it. So obviously Middletown being so far away will not have anything to say about Lyme, but in the regulation itself, if someone was allowed to pass something on in the spirit of making a very good regulation, it would be a pity to only allow agriculture workers in accessory apartments, because in work that I have done with my colleagues on farms, the additional income of someone living in an outer building can really make a difference in the income of the primary owner's ability to run the farm. So that would be something. The second thing is the dark skies ordinances. That Lyme is one of the forerunners, and I don't see anything in there. So I don't know if it would be applicable. And as Bill pointed out, maybe there's not a lot of farms along the river, but the dark skies ordinance is really quite revolutionary. I'm going to use that word. And maybe Raul and I will talk about it later.
yeah.
But
So along those lines, the Connecticut River Gateway Commission is in the process of asking its member municipalities to adopt residential lighting standards for the first time. And the purpose of that is to reduce light pollution. In this regulation, I don't think that there's discussion about light pollution.
Yes, there is.
So is it under the greenhouse section?
I forget which section it is, but
Oh,
it's in there. Yes.
Yeah, so there is discussion of lighting,
Great.
Good.
but I'm not sure if it's actually what you are referring to. Let me find it.
Let me think. It's in section 11-11.6.
Okay.
Item number H is in Hilo.
Yes, so there is language in here to prevent unnecessary light pollution. Lighting standards shall not exceed 12 feet in height. Parking and sidewalks may be lit for safety, only using light bollards or other low-level lighting standards within shielded light sources.
But it's still
So-
subjective.
Right.
Yes. the 2700 degree Kelvin is the key number to add. And again, I guess I'm speaking as a citizen because we're so far away from Lyme, but Lyme is the darkest spot. It's, you know, it's nationally recognized as a dark place. And so I think that number should be put in. I don't know who was just speaking, but I'd like your opinion.
Yeah, that was Harold
Oh,
from.
this is
the-
Harold, yes.
Harold.
Well, I also consider that probably Lyme is one of the least populated areas. And so, but it's something that we're struggling with in even old Lyme, because, you know, we're talking about, you know, people with spotlights on the garage doors, how it impacts people across the street. And so I think there should be some kind of a recommendation as how many lumens is appropriate for a spotlight, especially for a shielded spotlight.
I guess I want to second Catherine's that if we submit a comment here, it highlights our interest that this matter be pursued. I don't know that we at this meeting are going to be able to get into the technicality of it, but
That's possible, yes.
but I do suggest that there's certainly no harm in adding to this paragraph H a reference to that's not the lumens, but rather the I don't know what you call that.
It's the temperature of the light or the color of
Temperature
the
of the
light.
light.
Color temperature, the
Yeah.
right terminology.
So can we
no
add
color.
our comments to the, whenever, can you tell us when the Lyme P and Z is reviewing this so we can throw in our 2 cents and then,
So that can be included in the COG's referral and as a reference to your review. So this would be your review as a commissioner, as a member of the regional planning committee.
Right, that's why I think our review might suggest that paragraph H should reference 2,700 as desired.
degree Kelvin.
It's 2,700, a color temperature of 2,700 degrees Kelvin.
Frank
Yes,
knows.
That's a lighting engineer for years.
in as much as possible.
A long way from
yeah,
absolute zero.
It should not exceed that if it would be optimal. Yeah.
I don't know if you can be so rigid, but at least my way of putting it is that should be the goal.
Yeah. And remember, our suggestion is just a suggestion to them, you know.
Let them, they'll either dismiss it or they'll work out the specific language when they pass the regulation.
And one suggestion that we could also make furthering that is that there are dark sky approved lighting fixtures. There are standards and certifications for lighting fixtures that are the proper color and also are full cutoff and will not add unnecessarily to light pollution. But that can be added to the letter as a suggestion.
Right. All of these are suggestions.
Yeah, in the meeting, the Lyme Planning and Zoning meeting is on the 10th of April.
Oh, thank you. But I would also put in the letter, you know, bravo. This is for Lyme, for a small town, this is an extraordinary accomplishment. So
yeah,
I think they should be applauded.
Right. Harold, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Let's go back to 8.6 agricultural. It talks about new structures used for processing that do not reflect traditional New England farm structures shall be adequately screened. Now, what is a traditional New England farm structure? I guess I don't know what that is.
That's pretty vague.
So it's very subjective. And so it's, because pole barns, were used a long time ago and they've been used forever and ever. And so maybe that's what they're looking for. There's a couple other things that were kind of subjective that I came across.
This was 8.6.
That was 8.6.
See, I'm looking at the actual regulations and it starts at 315, 8.1. I don't see.
Okay, go.
I think
Uh,
it's
I think it was 8.6 I looked at. Yes.
Article 11.
Oh, one other thing before you get to that, I think even
Right. There's customary home
I
occupations.
see.
Yeah, I think this was 8.6. This is
Yeah,
general
I-
standards, 8.6. Here's seasonal employee housing.
no, let's see.
There's hoop houses. All right, here it is. Agricultural processing of a contiguous land area of 20 acres or more, where the number of employees exceeds those permitted in
In
3.1.
paragraph number 5, I think it goes down. Do not.
New structures used for processing that do not reflect a traditional England farm structure shall be adequately screened from the street and adjoining residential properties. Yeah, that is, what does traditional New England farm structure mean? Does it mean if you're talking about food processing, modern food processing is built in takes place in modern industrial buildings.
Yeah, it's a steel fab or something like that.
Right,
Maybe the comment should be that's vague, that term.
like, is it supposed to be, and then also is that, yeah, it's very vague and I'm not exactly sure what is meant by that. You could paint or try to make the exterior of the building look more New Englandy, but that would just be a parody of a New England farm structure, not really. I'm not exactly sure how you would comply with that.
And
Yeah,
how
when
much-
actually when they do verbiage like that, the problem that you get into is that that's something that can be challenged. So,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
somebody comes in and they say, this is what I'm building, and then the town says, no, I don't like that. It doesn't look the way a traditional building would look, whatever that is. There's no definition, there's no guidelines, there's no nothing. That could be an issue for them.
Right, and the question is that would you be required to build some sort of post and beam barn for your food processing in order to be allowed to do it on site? So that is a question. I think the intent here is to keep the on-site food processing or agricultural processing small, but I think that could be done by other means.
All right, Harold, any other comments?
A couple more.
Go ahead.
315-8.1, customary house occupation, small scale agricultural.
Mhm.
Going down to section C, there was a note in the margin that said fitness studios now permitted, but I didn't see where it was listed in the regulation.
Mm.
And I know they like the Lime, they have a Red Barn yoga place, which is very popular and very successful, but
Yeah.
it's not listed in this regulation. I didn't find it. I mean, I only went through the regulation probably once or so, but some sections a little bit more than that.
I had a comment I wanted to make also, and that is, I don't think that this really permits, and I think it should permit, like honey, maple syrup, that kind of a small
absolutely,
scale operation.
absolutely. I mean, we got people that are drawing sap all over the place, and so it's yes, good, very good point.
And that would be, to me, that would be something that you would want to. That's a desirable use, I think.
That's a sweet spot.
Yeah, so
That's a
if we
sweet
go
spot.
back, it is in the definition of agriculture. So I'll go back. So I'm actually turning this scanned and scanned PDF into something that's searchable through Adobe Acrobat. So it's taking its time to do that. But actually, let me quit that. But it's in the definition in the beginning of the document. Maple syrup is actually in the definition of a farm.
Yeah, but isn't that more of a, I mean, that gets into a gray area in my mind, Sam, only because it's more of a processing facility that they would be building, like a sugar house. You know, it may not be on the farm where the trees are that they're tapping.
So agriculture, so in the definition of agriculture, whereas agricultural farming shall include harvesting a maple sap, growing and harvesting a mushroom. So the collection of the sap is definitely considered.
Yeah, but this is the processing, you're right.
I do not see, well, it does talk about raising, shearing, feeding, caring for training.
It does talk of processing of produce, dairy products, meats, maple syrup, honey, or any other agricultural commodity
Yeah.
Okay,
under.
I didn't see that, but that's okay,
under-
as long as it's in there.
It's in the definition, and I'm pretty sure, but the question is that if under this definition about New England character for the building, what does that mean for your sugar shack?
Yes, correct. That's another, is it a steel fab or is it a post and beam or what is it? So,
Yeah.
Well, in some ways, it doesn't matter how it's constructed, if on the
as long as
exterior,
it looks, yep, that's true.
it has a gable, it has a slope roof instead of a flat roof, et cetera, et cetera. So if you cannot provide the language, you should at least provide some visuals, which would be called guidelines of, these are examples of buildings that follow a New England architecture, and these are buildings which do not. So it would be, it has a good intent, but you're going to need many, many other words to show it, but pictures can do it rather quickly.
Yeah, I agree. I think that maybe one of the recommendations should be that not only is the term like somewhat arbitrary, but guidelines should be provided to assist the applicant.
Good point. Good point.
All right. Other comments?
Yeah, I have a couple others.
Go ahead.
If we go back to, we went to the lighting already. Another one, if we go back to, let's see, in section 11.5, contents of site plan application, and we go back to section C and then subsection C, talks about fire protection. I'll wait till you get there.
If you have the page number, that'd be helpful because
There
way
are no
this-
page numbers on this.
Oh, you're right. Of the PDF at least.
That would be very helpful also. If you see additional requirements, you're getting close.
Cindy, I see you have your hand up. We'll get to you right next.
It's okay. There's 11.
11.5, I think I said. Yeah, 11.5
There we go.
contents of application.
Almost there. Yeah, here it is.
Here
Yep.
we go. Keep going down. Next section is additional requirements. Is the next section that you want to look at.
Okay. I see. All right.
Keep going. There we
Yeah.
go. Now we go down to item number C. Goes for fire. Keep going down. Fire
Fire
protection.
protection. Yeah.
All right. In that it says the applicant shall identify sources of water for fire protection. And it goes through all the other things and includes a water tank.
Mhm.
We have experienced the fact that, our fire marshal has recommended water tanks. it's been very challenging. Because, you think about a water tank, how much water do you need to extinguish a fire, depending on what the structure is. And if you look at a 30,000 gallon water tank, then who's going to take care of it? Who's going to maintain it? Who's going to verify it every year? Who's going to make sure that it's not leaking? Who's going to replace it after 40 years? All these things. So what we did with our regulations is we included the option of fire suppression systems, or, basically, fire suppression systems within the structure. And that should be included in that. And I would take out the water tanks,
So
because they're just.
I will point out that this is existing language. This is not part of what they're proposing, for at least for a zoning amendment.
But we
But-
might
but-
just add, we might just suggest it to them.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I want to be clear about is that our kind of our task with these things is to see if there's intermunicipal impacts. So if the one town likes to inspect their water towers and another town doesn't want to, that's a kind of a town thing. Unless there's an intermunicipal impact from that. And there might be, I guess if you have a big enough factory.
We're talking about
it
water
could be-
towers here. We're talking about water tanks for fire suppression or fire response from the fire department.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And so we've had tanks that have been installed, and then they had to be repaired. And at some point, the town is going to have to replace them, and then the liability is on the town. And
Why would it be
so-
on the town?
they are.
Because the town required it. I mean, we could say that the residents have to do it because it may be, if it's a what am I thinking about? It's like a residential area where they have, they're supposed to be protecting them based on the distance
A way of
from
dealing
the fire department to for the location.
Well, one thing that's, you could possibly, as a comment here, is something about that this is part of the duties of the fire marshal to ensure. Because what this says is that the fire marshal, there needs to be a written report shall include the evidence that comments the fire marshal have been solicited and received. You could go further in that that this is the purview and responsibility of the fire marshal to ensure that fire protection is adequately provided.
Well, that would be good. Or just add the thing that you could have, independent fire suppression for each structure, which is available.
This is only about identifying sources of water. This whole paragraph.
It still need,
It's not about how to handle fires. It just has to do with the applicant identifying sources of water. And what you're saying is that actually you don't need to identify sources of water if you have
If you have a fire suppression system.
if you have a fire suppression system. I don't know if we can go into that.
We've gone into that because we've changed our regulations in Old Lyme. Because we've given the option.
Yeah.
That a residential area can have a water tank, or they can put in independent fire suppression systems.
And that could be of interest, particularly if you're talking about manufacturing of agricultural products from the farm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what the systems are is you have a water tank, then you have an air tank, and when these things go off, the air tank the water tank has been stagnant, the air tank is always pressurized. When these things go off, it has a certain amount of water per area, and it does the same thing and very quickly. And so the insurance companies are happy with that. They appear to be.
And is this
So it's a recommendation, not a.
okay?
All right. Any others?
a question. Is there a stipulation on inspection? of any system, whether it's a
I-
tank
well,
or it's a suppression
I
system.
think it's, actually, it's very prudent to have these things checked at periodically. It's
Right.
like everybody else. I mean, you have your boiler checked out once a year.
Right.
You have your AC system checked out periodically, 1 or 2 years, you know.
So there are National Fire Protection Association guidelines for how often this has to be done. In
Mhm.
some towns, the fire
Yes.
marshal wants it done more often or less often. It's really his call. And then that includes inspections. The other people that get involved are the insurance companies. Sometimes the insurance companies
Correct.
will only write the policy if it's been inspected every 12 months or something. That's I think beyond like the scope of what we do as a commission. But I think we could make a recommendation that these types of systems could be considered.
I would appreciate that. Yes.
And one other thing, the water tank or suppression system, if it needs to be replaced because either the insurance company or whichever official, the town fire marshal inspects it and says, hey, this is, it needs to be replaced, that it really should be written in that it is the cost
The
is going to
owner's
be
responsibility.
switched to the homeowner's responsibility.
Correct. This is
Yeah.
one of our this is one of our big issues because we looked at these tanks and we've got, 2 different residential sections, homeowners associations with them,
Mhm.
and it becomes the town's responsibility.
Yeah.
We wanted to shift this whole thing to the homeowner's responsibility.
Right.
That requires rewriting that section, fire protection section.
Yeah.
It's also, this section is I think for the general requirements from the regulations in total in line. And so I think this is not specific to the updates for agricultural uses. This is a comment in general for a site plan application.
Absolutely.
And as part of the site plan application, I think the issue about fire suppression that I would believe would be on the property owner's responsibility. In the site plan requirements right now in the town of Old Lyme, they just have to show that they have a source of water putting out that put out a fire.
Well, and maybe this is the wrong section for it to be in, and maybe what the town needs to do is somehow say that as part of their zoning regulations, or planning regulations, that they have, make sure that as far as they don't have a water tank, that if they need to be, and the whole thing about the water tank is this. If you don't have a source of water, I mean, you got tanker trucks that are gonna be responding, but they have a limited capacity. And so you need additional water usage. And so if the distances, especially up in Lyme, if it's a very significant distance from the source of water to the location of the fire, it's a moot point being able to fill up your tanker truck and get back up there.
Well, but this is once again the purview of the fire marshal to be able to determine if what's being proposed is adequate or not. And that
Well, we've been trying to educate our fire marshal.
All right, I'm gonna need to, folks, I gotta move to Cindy. Thank you for the comments, Harold. We got Cindy, then I've got
Okay,
Bill.
yes,
Go ahead,
thank
Cindy.
you. I took all your time, sorry.
Thank you. This is a wonderful plan that Lyme has taken on. I agree with other comments about that. Just curious, and it doesn't necessarily have intermunicipal impact, but wonder if it's standard for other towns as well when they adopt these kinds of regulations. Under 8.6, under C, site plan approval, up to 3 farm-to-table dinners per year seems limiting to me. I could be wrong, but not sure whether other towns, what their approaches are.
Yeah, that does seem rather limiting.
Mhm.
I am actually a part owner of a mushroom farm in upstate New York, and we do monthly farm to table dinners. So I don't know where the number 3 comes from. Oh yeah, I hear it. Up to 3 farm to table dinners per year.
Yes.
Increasingly for farmers to make ends meet, they do need these value added
Mhm.
either processing or farm experiences, and being able to invite a chef to come in and cook a dinner for people who are willing to pay $50-$60 for the meal is important for the farm
Mm.
the farmer
Agreed. It just seems, as a business plan, that just seems very limiting, like you're saying too, and that's great that you do that. It looks like you have to have a special permit if you have more than 3 under D. More
Yeah,
than 3
so-
farm to table dinners per year, you have to get a special permit. Again, seems a little excessive. And then just one more comment real quick under 8.1, second to the last bullet, no more than 3 non-resident or resident employees other than owners of the farm and their immediate family shall be employed on the site. Again, it looks like it would be under the CHO, it's smaller operations, but still limiting. Or could
Yeah,
be
actually,
limiting. It could be limiting.
I think there was a concern about the word use of the word employee there as well. If I read something online from Lime, it had to do with the fact that a lot of times the workers are not employees.
Mhm.
They can be hired.
Mhm. How would they not be employed if they're hired?
Well, you get the contract workers that come in.
Oh, I see. Okay. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Bill. Okay.
I
Right.
took my hand down. I mean, from what I know of Old Lyme, probably most of the farmers are volunteers on the fire department, and they probably were all invited to the meetings to write these regulations. There's only a couple thousand people in Old Lyme.
Right.
I mean, in Lyme, sorry.
In Lyme. Yeah. All right. So with that, if there's any other comments, let's forward them to Sam. Sam, is Torrance going to be writing the recommendation for this?
Yeah, so what I'll do is we'll get the list of comments from Eliza, and Torrance will write the referral for this. We have, let's see, we have about 2 weeks on it. The 10th is, yes, it's 2 weeks from today. So we have 2 weeks to be able to get that in. But we'll take down the comments. If any of you have further comments that you'd like to be reflected in that letter to Lyme, I think in general, this is a good proposal. But I think some of the comments regarding lighting and other items, I think are good things to point out to the town. I did find the section on fitness studio now permitted. What's interesting is that, a customary home occupation shall not include barbershops, beauty shops, dancing schools, karate schools, restaurants, printing shops. So it's more or less this a list of the things that are not allowed. You're not allowed to have a radio station as a home occupation, but because fitness studio is not listed as what's not allowed, it is by I guess it is allowed. It seems a little confusing here. I don't necessarily have an objection to fitness, but
It's by default.
yeah, by default, the way it's worded, it's only if you are one of these things, you're not allowed to be there.
You can't do any karate to fitness.
Or be an employment agency, or like the radio station's an interesting one, but yeah.
Okay, very good. All right. Is it all right if we move on, folks? All right,
Please.
looks good. So let us move on to updates. CEDS, Sam or Megan?
So Megan sent me a text that she might not be able to make it. I don't see her. So I will give the update on that too. Let's see. Megan is going through all of the comments that were submitted during the public comment period. and working on the matrix of how each what each comment was and how how they were addressed. I know it's painstaking work going through them, because sometimes you'll have a long letter, and inside that letter there's multiple independent comments that have to be addressed. But she is doing that and finishing up the work on that. We are also in the process of, we had a little bit of extra money in the project, and we're in the process of doing an additional appendix on business resiliency. This original money came from the CARES Act, which was COVID response and recovery funds. And so what we're going to be doing is looking at those essential businesses in each one of your towns that are important to your town, and important for to be supported in the case of an emergency or disaster. Usually, government focuses on the public sector, but for example, those medical clinics, those gas stations, the grocery stores, the pharmacies, all privately owned, but are really essential for your community in any type of disaster. So we're right now working on scoping with Ninigret as to what this appendix could look like to the SEDS. But we think it could be a useful document for the towns to use to ask those questions about how can we support these businesses that we need to be operational come a disaster. So I think that's an exciting addition that we'll be able to add to this document. We're not going to hold up the submission of the SEDS though. I think once we're done with the comments, we can then proceed with the process of finalizing it and submitting it to the state for their approval, and then to the U.S. Economic Development Administration (EDA) for their approval. We got recommendation from the Northeast Connecticut Council of Governments that we should also submit for Economic Development District designation at the same time, because that can take a very long time to get through. A number of the COGs have been waiting years for this to come through. Northeast Connecticut COG has been waiting for years, and one of the recommendations was don't wait till your SEDS is approved, because that can take a little while as well. What I can do is, if there's anything that I've missed, I will make sure that Megan sends you an email with a further update.
All right. Comments for Sam or questions for Sam on the SEDS plan?
I just have one question, which is, aside from going through and organizing the comments and responding to each comment, do you know whether any changes are being made to the document of any?
Oh, yes. So she did say that she's trying to jump on once her kids are asleep. So let me see if I can get her on right now. But yes, she's working on a number of the edits from those comments. So yes, changes and clarifications are being made.
Okay. Other comments or questions regarding the SEDS plan? No? Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next then. That would be B, and that would be the MTP, Metropolitan Transit Plan, Sam?
Yeah, so the public comment period for that ended I think on the 8th of March. Rob Harriman has gone through. Rob is here. Oh, Rob.
Yeah.
Why don't you give an update? Right.
Let's see here. We ended on the 18th. Let's see here. It's mostly, for the most part, it's pretty much done. We have some layout and graphic edits, and just finishing incorporating a few of the comments, the last minute comments into the plan, and that's really about all we have left.
Okay. Questions for Rob? Comments?
I noticed a lot of typos, and I don't know if I was given an old draft, but someone who was not the primary person involved needs to sit down and read it cover to cover.
What are these, punctuation errors? What kind of errors?
Spelling errors.
Oh, spelling errors. All right, that should
Yeah, I
be,
know a few were addressed because that was some of the comments that came in through the online comment form. I don't remember what pages specifically off the top of my head. There were a few of those. I mean, if you have some specific ones, just send them right in. But I mean, of course, we'll do, spell check and all that before the final version goes out. So.
okay.
Yeah, and Catherine, if you have any examples, please send them over our way. But I will make sure that other staff members read it as well before it's finalized.
Okay, that would be good.
Yeah, to catch any of those typos.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
It's sometimes hard when you're the main writer on it.
And I know that this plan has been done a couple of times since, we've all been meeting. And one of the questions I always bring up is, has there been any movement at all on lighting for Route 9? It's one of the few highways where there's no lighting until you get to Middletown. And then there are pros and cons to lighting it. There are people that don't want it lit, and there are safety reasons to light it. So has there been any activity on that, Sam?
I don't think there has been any activity, but you're absolutely right. It is not as clear cut as because there's been proposals on the other side to create this into a scenic byway, which would probably get in the way of DOT putting in lighting. That scenic byway proposal didn't go anywhere with the previous Commissioner Rediker. But in general, I don't know of any program at this point for DOT adding lighting. But besides what we already have, the best bet for getting lighting installed would probably be around some problematic intersections or exits. But I don't know without a specific proposal how we would get this done. I think the best bet would be is that if we had concerns about specific exits or ramps that were problematic, that's where you would put the lighting. Either where the merge was difficult, or the ramp needed to be lit because it was dangerous in some way, particularly at night or inclement weather, in bad weather. So, Rob, I don't know if do you have anything to add to that?
No, I do believe it was brought up in the past. It might have been actually in the last update of the plan 4 years ago.
I'm sure it was. Yeah.
And I believe DOT just basically said they're not really interested in studying it at this point, but I mean, we could bring it back up. I mean,
How do you all feel about that, commission members?
I'm very much against putting poles all the way down that section of the highway. I think it would be a disaster. That's me. That's just a personal opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what we're here for, Earl. So
Also, it has been studied, and it is safer to not have the lighting. It is better to have the lighting of your own automobile. And this involves glare and fog and all those other things. I think it's a real privilege to drive up Route 9 in the dark. And it's one of the great joys of Middlesex County, in my opinion.
Exactly.
okay.
When
All
you
right.
get into the hill and then you finally see all those light poles, it's kind of a shame because there's the most fantastic view looking north from the top of that hill, and in the evening you can't see a thing because of the lighting.
You're talking about as you go into Middletown there?
Yeah, as you
Yep.
go up, there's a
Yeah.
point at the very high hill, and you can see all the way to past Meriden, and it's amazing view. But not when it's dark, because the moment the lights come out, it sort of blanks everything out.
Okay.
yeah, it was part of the reason as well, too, because there was a study maybe 15 years ago to put decorative lighting on the Aragoni Bridge, and there was a fair amount of just public involvement, complaining about light pollution from doing such, putting up these, these draped kind of Christmas lights in the Aragoni, and that didn't really fly through the public involvement process very well. So
Well, Rob, why is it listed in one of the Middletown things that we want to do? That is an old idea and it's on the list. I'm gonna go into the Department of Public Works this week and ask them to look at the list. It just seems, this is not a current list of things, and that Aragoni Bridge is the biggest sore spot.
Yeah, it's never been taken off the books officially. It's just one of those semi, dead projects that's just been stalled at the local level, but I don't think it was ever completely, closed out through DOT or anything.
All right, so that was my primary question that I wanted to ask someone. How did this list get created? I don't want a long story, but if what you're saying is if there's a bad idea, how does something get removed? Does the city have to write you a formal letter saying so?
No, not really. I mean, there's nothing in the works right now. I think there was a consultant was on, and this was way back in the Vinny Amato days. I think he was one of the ones who was really pushing for this. And I think Susan Bransfield too on the other side of the bridge did. But I mean, after the study and the initial, there's no funding for it right now. It just hasn't been removed from the books.
So the question, Bob, is how do you remove it from the list on your plan?
I don't know. I don't know where it is. I'd have to look and see. I mean, if the
It's
city
under
wanted-
Middletown.
Yeah, but what's the process for removal?
So I think this is the wish list that we asked for each of the towns. So if we hear from the city, whether from the mayor's office or from the city planning office, that they want that removed, or Public Works, I think that would be sufficient.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, others? Okay. I guess we'll move on to item C, legislation. Boy, is there a lot of stuff to talk about here. Those of us that have been actively listening to and involved with some of the legislation that's going on in Hartford have testified, written testimony, stayed up all day and night and spoken and whatnot. So Sam, go ahead.
So a number of bills which that RiverCOG has submitted testimony on and partially in opposition to have moved forward. I think some of the most notable ones I think that have moved forward are the Open Community Alliance's Fair Share Housing Bill, Desegregate Connecticut's Live Work Ride Bill has moved out of committee. I have just casually talked to some legislators. I think some of these bills I think have moved out of as a courtesy, but we expressed some serious concerns, not with the underlying ideas behind them of building and creating more affordable housing in more of the state and in our municipalities in particular, but just the mechanisms that they propose either were unworkable or just it didn't seem like they truly understood the impact of what they were proposing. I submitted, at least for the Desegregate Connecticut bill, about 6 pages of comments identifying some of the logistical issues that they identify. But it was just pointed out to me that according to this bill, that most of our municipalities, any development that in the future that is 10 units or larger would be required to do a 20% set aside for affordability. I think from a housing policy perspective, I think that would be great for creating more affordable units, but it may not be financially viable in most places to be able to do that. I think there's a misunderstanding about how expensive it is to build housing right now, with the cost of land, the cost of materials, cost of labor, cost of compliance to a number of efficiency standards, and then what a developer can recoup to provide those units without any sort of subsidy. So I think that's good. So I think that's this interesting thing. I'm still trying to understand. On the fair share bill, there seems to be a misunderstanding of the housing needs. We have low-income households who struggle to pay rent. The solution put forward in that bill is that we should build each one of them a brand new housing unit somewhere in a rural or suburban town. And it seems like a very anti-urban proposal. First of all, it makes the paternalistic assumption that everyone wants to move out of the cities, but also that there aren't more efficient ways of dealing with this by helping people where they are, or the more I think dignified way of actually consulting these people, as opposed to creating a law that dictates how everyone must be dealt with. One of my major comments on that bill was that you're trying to help a certain portion of Connecticut residents, yet nowhere in the bill do you actually talk to them to ask them what they want. Maybe they'd want to invest, if we're going to spend billions of dollars, maybe they'd want investment in transportation, on education, on safety, on energy efficiency, on upgrading their existing neighborhoods. And that's making a big assumption that there's actually money to do these things. So I think those were the two big bills of note. There are so many other bills out there, more bills than I could write testimony on. Frank, I don't know if you wanted to, the other bills you wanted me to cover.
Well, I mean, I think that people should get out and read these bills, because some of the verbiage in it and the impact that would be felt if these bills were passed just goes beyond the pale. I mean, they're talking about putting 10, for a small town, 10 residences per acre on main streets. Now,
Mhm.
I don't know about some of your towns, but here in Durham, that's our historic district. And it does qualify. No matter how you read the regulation, or you say, well, there's this out and there's that out, and even when people were giving testimony for the many hours on these things, people were like, okay, how do you define these terms? There's a term that was used, reasonableness. There's also the creation of a new office, but there's no criteria for what this, what the office is supposed to do has been defined. There's no criteria for what this office costs, what it's, what's the appeals process with this. There really is no appeals process, because it's basically one person dictating whether you cut the mustard or you don't. So really kind of a tough bill, and a lot of stuff in it. So I urge you to please get involved in these things early on. I know Sam puts these things out, sends you little blurbs and stuff, but pay attention, because there's a lot of stuff going on, from blight ordinances, changes to how taxes will be assessed for the municipalities. There's so much up there that's going on.
Oh, like there was one bill that would change the definition of what segregation meant. And it would mean that any grouping of a protected class, any geographic grouping of a protected class, would be considered segregation. And I pointed out many examples why people would want to live near each other. We have many examples of immigrant populations in Connecticut where let's say the Portuguese-speaking Brazilian population, there's a large population in Danbury, for example, because they want to be near businesses and services and churches that speak their language, literally. I gave an example of where I used to work in Waterbury. There's a Orthodox Jewish yeshiva. Well, on the Sabbath, they don't drive, they walk. So there's another protected class, religion. That's not segregation, that's a choice. And it was just very interesting how these things get slipped into bills to create new meanings for words, and trying to figure out what exactly is trying to be accomplished here. I took up my professional organization, the Connecticut chapter of the American Planning Association, particularly in the Fair Share Housing Bill, because in three different parts, it sort of added up to creating a situation where municipalities would have to pay for constructing a number of housing units directed by the state office at OPM. Well, I kind of called my colleagues. I said, I don't have a problem with us discussing public funding of affordable housing. but let's not do it in a hidden way in a statute. And also, is the property tax the best source of public funding for affordable housing when increases in property tax will make housing more unaffordable to the people who are just barely hanging on? And I said, if we're going to have these debates about public funding for affordable housing, let's make sure we have them out in the open and not in some sort of hidden way, which is I don't think is a proper way to have a public policy debate. It's just very interesting. I was we had a discussion with the State of Connecticut, and we invited the Estuary Transit District to that discussion to talk about TOD and talk about investments we need in transit to actually make transit accessible development possible in places in our region. And what was interesting was that the executive director and his other staff really didn't know much about transit or the transit landscape in the state, which is of course half of what TOD is. But Frank, I see that Catherine has her hand raised.
Yes, Catherine, go ahead.
I just would like to be sent this particular bill, the 10 units to the acre.
Yep.
And not to get into a long discussion, but Frank, 10 units to the acre is absolutely something that would look wonderful on Main Street, Durham, and it would support transit, and it could change the lives of many people. So it might be that you don't have a good model to refer to, but I'd love to talk to you about that sometime.
Anytime.
Yeah, it's
all right.
House
Others?
Bill 6890, and I'll put the link in the chat.
Yeah, you have to remember, although we have city water, we do not have city sewers, Catherine. So 10 acres, I don't know where the sewer would be where the septic would be going, but it would have to be disposed of on site.
You can have septic systems that are like little greenhouses. But again, we'll talk sometime. Look at my message.
Sure. All right, Raul?
I just want to ask Sam if there is some way that doesn't stuff people's boxes with papers they don't want, to be able for us to learn a little bit about those comments that you send in. I don't know if you can put them on the web or some way we can, if we want to learn from what you're telling us, that we can look it up.
Sure. So we actually have a link to a spreadsheet, a live spreadsheet on our Office 365 SharePoint drive. Eliza can send that out to you. I actually had this earlier today. I sent her over some of my testimony to update the spreadsheet. But I'll ask her tomorrow to send out that link to that spreadsheet for all of our testimony.
By the way, that you know that you can access all of this and all the other bills online at cga.ct.gov.
Yeah, but I don't know how I would access Sam Gold's submissions.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm interested what the region is claiming to say, since I'm part of the region.
Yeah, and it's and the unfortunate thing is that at least for the desegregate bill, like we explained to them, like with transit-oriented development, it should not be something that we should be able to be on the same page here. RiverCOG is a finalist for technical support from the U.S. Department of Transportation for transit-oriented development plans for our 3 Shoreline East stations and for our bus passenger terminal in Middletown to try to leverage those transit assets better than we currently are. And so this is a recommendation on our regional plan, our housing plan, our transportation plan. So, but unfortunately, it seemed like that specific bill was something that was not about transit-oriented development. It was about something else. But yeah, so Raul, I'll have that spreadsheet sent to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Very good. All right. Other comments, questions? All right. Catherine, you still have your hand up?
Sorry.
Oh, no,
That's okay. All right. With that, we can move on to adjournment unless anyone has any other comments they'd like to make.
I'll just make one more comment. RiverCOG, I'm working with RiverCOG staff on a grant application for a grant from DEEP to look into possibilities for a regional waste authority. Many of you know about the trials and tribulations of MIRA, which was quite a large regional waste authority that ran a waste energy facility in Hartford. It is expected that MIRA will go out of existence, which leaves a number of RiverCOG's towns in a position of not knowing what will happen for their garbage disposal. MIRA operates a facility in Essex on Dump Road on exit 4 of Route 9, and that serves about 10 municipalities. The land is owned by the town of Essex, but the facility was built originally by CRA that became MIRA. And so I'm working on a grant application to look into the options of either creating our own regional waste authority to keep that facility open, or to partner with an existing regional waste authority, either through Middletown or through the capital region or through or something else that's existing, to try to have an entity to transfer some of those contracts. So the issues of waste have been known for a while in Connecticut. Unfortunately, the solution, it seems, that is being suggested by the state is that the towns figure something out on their own. So, but luckily they are making some funding available to help this occur. So, so that's, I think, a big thing that we're getting involved in currently, which might be of interest to you.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
I move.
So
Second.
moved by Roll and
I
second by
second.
Bill.
Okay.
Thank you all. Have a good evening. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed?
Thank
Abstaining?
you.
I declare the motion
Thank
passed.
you.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
night.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Good night.